Hello, Taylor. Thanks for coming on with us today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's so great meeting you, Taylor. I look forward to this interview with you.
Thank you. I'm excited to talk about everything that we're going to talk about.
So, Taylor, you're carrying forward the legacy of a multi-generational woman-owned construction company. Can you share with us how it all began?
So, my great grandpa Art, he started his company in North Dakota. He married my great grandma, and together they had four children, two boys and two girls. Um, Back there in North Dakota, my grandpa started his trucking company, which was also a little bit of a landscaping company. In the mid 1900s, around 1945, my great grandpa and grandma decided to uproot their family and move to the Pacific Northwest. They ended up settling in Renton, Washington. And from there, he grew his company and his business. And as the boys got older, my great uncle Bob and my grandpa Gary, they obviously took interest in the company and started driving truck and gaining experience and knowledge and all of that. And eventually, they both, Bob and Gary, started their own trucking companies aside from each other and my great grandpa, both based in Renton, Washington as well. And in 1973, my grandpa Gary decided to start his own company called Gary McCann Trucking, similar to his brothers, Bob McCann Trucking and his dad, Art McCann Trucking. So obviously, you could tell they're all related and work together. And so my grandpa, at his house, that's where he operated his business. He had a shop and an office. And with my grandma, she did a lot of the books. And together, they also had four children, two boys and two girls in the same order. And as they grew their company, my two uncles, Kevin and Tim, took interest in the company as well, started driving truck, kind of followed in the same footsteps, gained experience and knowledge. And my mom as well, she grew interest in high school and started doing books in the office and stuff. And before my mom graduated, I think she was around a freshman in high school, my grandma Paula started Silver Streak Inc. And at the time there was not very many women at all in the construction industry, let alone the trucking industry. And my grandma didn't know how to drive a truck either, but she knew the industry from my grandpa. So one by one, she started growing the company with trucks as well, in addition to my grandpa. And they operated both their businesses out of their uh, yard in Renton, which my grandma still lives in the same house today where they raised all of their kids. And yeah, it's awesome. And then in 1993, when my mom decided to kind of branch out on her own, she started her own trucking company, which she called T-Max, and kind of fell in the same footsteps. Um, One by one, started growing her fleet. And at the time, obviously, business was just word of mouth or waiting for the phone to ring. There wasn't LinkedIn or ways to connect or the internet and things like that. So obviously, it really wasn't as busy as it is today, but they they stayed steady and had a good life and um, created a good business for themselves, each individually, but together with family. And then in 1998, my mom purchased Silver Streak from my grandma. Um, and so since then, she's stayed the president of Silver Streak Inc. And my uncle Kevin now manages the shop. And they work close, and Kevin and my mom work closely together. And Tim now is, he kind of basically runs Gary McCann. My grandpa, unfortunately, he passed 2 years ago, but he runs that, and we all work closely together. And now Silver Streak owns and operates more than 60 trucks. We're one of the largest local non-union companies in this area for trucking, and we're certified DBE, SBE, WBE. And yeah, there's a lot of us that work together every day.
Great. That's quite the history you have. So, how has it changed since it was founded, and what traditions or values remain the same today?
So obviously we've grown a lot. Gary McCann is still operating. My uncle Tim runs that trucking company, but I would say that Silver Streak continued to grow at a very steady pace to what it is today. We have around 60 trucks, right around 75 employees, probably around 10 family members that work together in communication every day. Um, I would say all of our equipment has advanced quite a bit. We try to stay on top of having nice equipment and staying ahead of like the times essentially with like technology and things. Um, we obviously try to stay very connected as a family, but also with all of our employees and our coworkers. We all work hard, kind of like how they did back then. Um, yeah.
Good. So has there been any advice that you've got from your grandmother, your mother, or other family members that you want to share?
Yeah, I've got a lot of advice. Especially being a young woman, like in this industry, you kind of have to develop tough skin because it's such a male-dominated industry, and it's something I'm still learning. It's kind of hard to learn, but I would say that my grandma is definitely like a force not to be reckoned with. She's still, and my mom, they both say to like stay bold, stay true to yourself. If you know it's right, stick up for yourself. It's hard, and I'm very thankful for them because I know that they had a much different experience with being a woman in a male-dominated industry. Um, yeah, I would say also advice from my dad. He has a construction company as well, and he just says silence can't be misunderstood. Just keep your head down, kind of ignore the noise, and stay true to yourself as well, and work hard. And people will notice your character. You don't necessarily have to be talking all the time. You can learn a lot just through listening.
So construction is a male-dominated industry. What's your experience been, and do you have any advice for other women that might be thinking about going into it?
Yeah, so I would say for women in the industry, I think that it's definitely going to become more prominent with the amount of construction going on in the Seattle area. And I believe that women create such a similar but also fresh perspective than men sometimes. And I think that there's so many different ways to connect and bring people together. I think that it can be difficult, especially because sometimes men might not think that you know what you're talking about, or like for me, like the new young girl, but you kind of have to learn to ignore the noise, keep your head down, understand that you know what you're talking about, be confident, stay true to yourself. All those things are easier said than done, but I'm slowly learning, and I learned from my mom and my grandma as well that it can be done. So I'm obviously encouraged by them.
Good. Do you have a prediction where women construction companies might be in 10 or 20 years, or how your company might leave your mark?
Yeah, I think that women in construction will obviously become more like prominent. I think because people are constantly like inspired by each other and know that they can bring something to the table and have different perspectives. Um, I think in the next 10 to 20 years that we'll probably be doing the same thing. I think that hopefully with technology, we'll be able to advance in different ways. I would say that we still have a lot of paper, you could say, and are kind of behind the times in those areas because our work is kind of so specialized in ways where we haven't kind of explored all options. But I think that we could definitely, in the next 10 to 20 years, integrate ourselves with more technology, making it easier with our drivers and connecting things in our office and making things more streamlined for job sites and customers and pits where we get gravel and material from. There's definitely things out there, but I would say that we've kind of stayed comfortable with how we've done things for so long. We could expand in those areas, and I definitely think staying on top of like equipment as it advances. Um, there's a lot of talk about things going electric and stuff like that. So just kind of staying ahead of the times and educating ourselves. And I'm thank my uncle Kevin. He and my mom obviously communicate all the time about what's the best next step and how can we stay ahead of the curve and constantly educating ourselves.
Can you share a bit about your background and how you became involved in the family business?
Yeah, so growing up, I would work part-time in the office for either my mom or my dad's company. Um, and I would just do basic things in the office, either like filing or just any little thing that I had to do to stay busy. and I would basically just do it in the summertime or part-time throughout the school year. And then in college, I decided to major in psychology and business. I was super interested in psychology and learning more about that, and I wasn't really sure if I would be interested in working for either of my parents, so I kind of just wanted to explore different avenues. But unfortunately, I was trying to go to school during COVID, which was kind of a difficult time. But I was still able to get connected and explore an internship with Lakeside Industries, which is an asphalt paving company out of Issaquah, Washington. At least that's where my internship was out of. And I basically was reinforced that I really love the construction industry. And even though that's a different industry, it gave me a different perspective to what that is and also how it connects to my parents. And through that, I was able to learn so much. And then once I graduated college from Seattle Pacific, I decided to work with my mom. And I'm super thankful I took that opportunity because even though I've learned and I've heard so much about it growing up and being part of a family business, there's still so much I'm learning every day, the ins and outs, and through my family and my coworkers and just different people in the community and the industry. And yeah, that's kind of how I fell into it.
Are there any unique challenges you faced as a young leader in construction, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, there's definitely challenges. I would say, kind of like I touched on earlier, um, growing tough skin. I would say, there's the people that have been in the industry forever, and especially when you come on board as being like the owner's daughter, you get people just saying random things that can be frustrating, or you're just like the young new girl. So you definitely have to keep your head down, ignore the noise, and kind of like I said earlier, just work hard in silence. And that it can be difficult, but I would say you just have to ignore that. I would say another thing also that's challenging is working with family in a business. It's not always as glamorous as it sounds, but it's something I'm very thankful for. And at the end of the day, we all love it. I would say staying organized is like one of the key things for me. I definitely like plan out my weeks and plan out my days in a planner, just because it's easy to fall into your uncle being like, hey, let's go do this. But it's like, no, I actually have to get work done. And that is something that's not always easy, but manageable, I guess. Um, I would also say just being as organized as possible because construction is such a fast-paced industry, and it's something that you constantly have to be able to adapt to change and um, different things going on all the time.
Is there a specific real estate project or deal that you're particularly proud of?
Um, a project that I guess I'm proud of would be like the first one that I was really involved with. It is one that we're not as busy on right now, but we're still on it and working on it daily. It's the 405 project, the express toll lanes from Brighton to Bellevue. Um, that was something that I was kind of thrown into soon after I started with my mom, and I kind of had to work with my coworkers to figure it out. And it was one that has taught me so much with like adapting to change and again being organized and on top of kind of everything, just as far as like AP goes and AR and billing and tracking quantities and communication with our dispatch and our drivers. Um, it was kind of like the first one I had to be thrown into and learn all the different avenues and communicating with people on the jobs and in the office. And um, that one is one that I'm really proud of because it was fun as well. I was able to work with Silver Streak and then my dad's company and my cousin's company over in Eastern Washington that does something different. Um, yeah, so that was one I guess I'm really proud of.
If you could share one piece of advice from your construction career, something that you believe is the most important for success, what would it be?
A phrase that resonates with me would probably be one that my mom says all the time, keep on trucking, whether we're in the office or just personally going through something. She's like, you gotta just keep on trucking. But for me personally, I would say one that resonates more would be work hard in silence. I'm more of an introverted person by nature. So I tend to just try to work hard. I'm not super talkative all the time, but one-on-one, I will obviously like talk more and I try to just keep my head down. And I believe that people can understand your character just by you working hard and they'll see your values and what you stand for without having to talk all the time. And I believe also that you can learn so much just by listening and seeing how people work together and just observing. And I I think that you can carry yourself in great ways without having to vocalize a whole lot all the time.
Is there a book that has greatly influenced your life or your career?
Yeah, in college, I read a book by Meg Jay called The Defining Decade. And it was a book based around psychology, but it talks a lot about the importance of your 20s and setting a solid foundation for yourself and understanding your character and your identity and your relationships and how important it is to look at all those different things and how it could impact your life after your 20s as well. Um, I took a lot away from that book because we can all be really hard on ourselves, especially in our 20s, that, oh, we don't know what we're going to do or what our next steps are. And all we can do is just keep moving forward. And personally, I'm one that can be hard on myself. So I'm constantly setting goals that can be unrealistic. So I guess reeling myself back in and trying to just set a solid foundation, whether it's with my relationships, in my career, financially, just different ways. And our brains are still growing and changing in our 20s, and I guess throughout our whole life. Um, I guess that was one book that I just found to be really interesting, and integrating it with psychology too was something that I enjoyed.
How did you find out about this book?
So actually in college, it was a book that we were required to read. And me, I was like, oh boy, I don't really want to read this, but I ended up opening it and reading it all in one day. I like loved it, and I just found it to be fascinating.
Well, good, because now we know that books you get assigned in school from your teachers may not make sense, but they're going to have an impact. Jamie's always been one of my star students, so great to have her here. And Taylor, I appreciate all the history. And obviously, then you mentioned the name Gary McCann, and I being a McCann. So your great grandfather, my grandfather, started back in the 40s and the 50s with trucks and dirt. And I say I bleed dirt, so I
Yeah.
keep going through it. So it's great that your family has continued through it. And one follow-up question is the next generation going onto it too? You're the fourth generation. Is there any chance of
Yeah.
a fifth?
Yeah, my one of my cousins were pretty close. We're about a year apart. He started his own construction company, and he's recently he has a son and a daughter now, and I could totally see his son probably following in the same footsteps with his dad. They're in Eastern Washington, but they do trucking and excavation as well. So I'm sure they'll probably work together. And I work closely with my mom, and my brother also works in the shop with my Uncle Kevin. So you never know, but there'll probably be many generations to come.
Good. Well, you have an inspirational family. You're an inspiration. So thanks for
Thank
coming on.
you.
If people want to connect with you, what's the best way to follow you or connect with you?
Yeah, so we're still a little bit old school. We don't have a website yet. Hopefully, one day soon. You can also connect to me through my email. We also have a social media, Silver Street Trucking on Instagram. You can follow us there. We're kind of starting to slowly grow that to incorporate our employees and jobs that we're working on. You can kind of get more of an in-depth idea of what we do day to day.
Also, LinkedIn. You're on LinkedIn?
Yep, I'm on LinkedIn.
We will put a profile or a way to contact you, or people can follow you there. So
Yeah.
once again, thanks for coming on with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.